Bamboo is often marketed to consumers as a more sustainable option rather than cotton or polyester, but is it? Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gita Marie and I answer questions about impact, environmental footprint, what we as consumers can do to navigate what we're being told about what is sustainable and what is not sustainable. And I've been wanting to make this video for a really long time. I've actually been planning it since September and I just haven't gotten around to filming it. I am so bloody excited to get started on this video. We are going cotton versus bamboo. Which fabric, which material is more sustainable? Which one should you choose when you're buying new clothing? I would actually like to start this video by correcting myself, because when I, as well as many other people who talk about sustainability, say something like, which is more sustainable, it's a little bit imprecise, because what I actually want to know is what is the closest to sustainability. Because while I agree that sustainability is somewhat of a spectrum, 99% of the things that we buy are not sustainable. Duh. But some are definitely closer than others. When we talk about sustainability, not from the point of view of an individual trying to do something, but when we talk about it in terms of businesses, advertising sustainability, material impact, that kind of thing, it's a very concrete thing. This is the definition I typically go by. And in that regard, it doesn't really make sense to talk about less or more sustainability. When we focus on the garment industry, it tends to imply that there is any sustainability there, and there just typically isn't. So although what is more sustainable is a quite common phrase, it's actually more precise to say what is the closest to sustainability. It's a small nuance, but it's kind of important. And I guess what we actually want to know is what has the highest environmental footprint and what has the lowest environmental footprint. So let's go with that. The clothes we wear are being made in bigger volumes than ever before. In 2024 alone, global fabric production hit a record of 132 million tons. And if current trends continue, that number is expected to reach 147 million tons by 2030. With our log, I can also see a scenario where we reach this point before 2030. Really. In 2023, the world produced nearly 69 million tons of chemical fibers, which was an increase of 12% in just 1 year. That is significant. And while most of that came from synthetic materials like polyester and nylon, a smaller but fast-growing share, around 4.8 million tons, came from regenerated cellulose fibers made from natural sources like wood pulp or bamboo. Bamboo is in a category of increasing popularity, and I'm sure that you have seen advertisements for bamboo clothing as well. The fashion industry has also received an increasing amount of criticism regarding their overconsumption, so they keep finding new ways of pulling us back in. Here's some overall key numbers about the fashion industry that I think we all should be talking about way more. According to climate science, making 1 kilogram of fabric releases between 17 and 23 kilograms of greenhouse gases. And the garment industry alone is responsible for between 4 and 10% of man-made greenhouse gases. That is quite some elbow room right there, I do admit. It depends on the calculations methods that's used, but if we put it into perspective, the aviation industry is responsible for around 2.5%. So even the best case scenario, where the garment industry is responsible for just 4%, that is still, considering how often we talk about the impact of flying and how widely spread it is that flying is bad for the environment. But clothing, yeah. So all in all, the fashion industry has no intention of slowing down. They are just producing new products. They are also receiving wide criticism, which means that they keep finding solutions to fix those criticisms. The garment industry just loves to fix a broken pipe with duct tape. They love solutions if those solutions make it possible for them to continue their growth. And that's why we're seeing an increase of alternative sustainable materials, like we're seeing a massive increase in recycled polyester, as well as alternative fabrics altogether, like bamboo. The production of cotton fabric starts in the field where cotton plants are grown and harvested. Once picked, the raw cotton goes through ginning, which is a process that separates the soft cotton fibers from seeds and plant debris. The clean fibers are then carded and combed to align them, then they're spun into yarn, finally they're woven into fabrics or knitted, and after that the fabric is usually dyed, treated, before it's turned into actual clothing. And this process is pretty straightforward. We have been making clothing from the cotton plant for hundreds and hundreds of years. So what many people probably don't realize is that cotton is a very resource-intensive material to make. It requires a lot of land, it requires a lot of water, and it requires a lot of chemicals to get the desired results. And I have a whole impact analysis that go into way more detail with the cotton industry, but here are some of the main takeaways. Cotton accounts for roughly 19 to 25% of fabrics produced globally. It's often seen as a natural option in contrast to polyester, but cotton uses the most pesticides and insecticides for a non-food crop in the world. It's also a thirsty crop, and a popular figure describes how it takes 2,700 liters of water to produce one cotton t-shirt. Bamboo fabric begins with harvesting mature bamboo stalks. The bamboo is then cut into small pieces and processed to extract cellulose. And this is the key building block of the fiber. In the most common method, the cellulose is chemically dissolved using the viscose process and turned into a liquid solution. That solution is then pushed through tiny holes in a machine to form fibers, which are then spun into yarn or woven into fabrics. And when we look into the production of bamboo, one thing that becomes quite clear quite quickly is that bamboo fabric doesn't actually have any bamboo in it. We're extracting the cellulose from the bamboo, so we're not actually using bamboo fiber, we're using cellulose derived from bamboo. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. This study compared viscose made from cotton, wood, and bamboo using a full life cycle assessment. And they measured everything from planting and pulping in the production to energy input and emission. And they found that bamboo fabric tends to perform the best, meaning it has the lowest environmental footprint. This table shows how the carbon footprint of cotton pulp, wood pulp, and bamboo pulp compared during the planting process. The carbon footprint of bamboo in the planting process is around 0.4 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per ton, while that of wood is 1.3, approximately 3 times more than bamboo. And the carbon emissions for cotton during the planting process is over 20 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per ton. That is a pretty significant difference. And before you go, but Gita Marie, what about the other tables that show a much smaller difference between cotton and bamboo? Isn't it a bit misleading to specifically point out the parts where bamboo is so much lower than cotton and not also mention those other aspects of the table that show them having much more equal impacts? Shh, I'm getting to it. Let's zoom in on water usage a little bit. As I said before, cotton is a very thirsty crop, using a lot of water to produce very little. It requires extensive irrigation, and one very popular number that is thrown around quite a lot is this 2,700 liters of water to produce one cotton t-shirt. So obviously I tried to find out where that number came from. It's often used without any citation, which obviously is really frustrating when you're trying to show your sources right. Annoying. I traced it back to a WWF report that was also backed by the European Parliament. It is this report. In comparison, there is some quite conflicting numbers when it comes to the water usage required for bamboo, which is honestly not very surprising. Like, I would be more surprised if there wasn't a massive variation, because the supply chains for bamboo are quite different. I have 2 other videos that go into detail with bamboo supply chains and how they're kind of a black box at this point, so not very surprising that there is some variation here. What really frustrates me is that the numbers that I'm seeing seems to be pulled from thin air. I found one source that said that it requires between 200 and 300 liters of water to produce, and I found other sources that said around 900 liters. These numbers didn't really come with any citation or from any published reports, rather they came from websites belonging to companies that sell bamboo clothing. So yeah, I would take it with a grain of salt. One of the types of praise that bamboo often get is that it can grow in really harsh conditions where other crops really can't. So cotton requires very extensive irrigation, so you need to water it all the time, and you don't necessarily need to do the same thing with bamboo. It can grow with less irrigation, less specifically, because I've also seen a lot of these websites claim that their bamboo is made completely without irrigation. Once again, grain of salt. I would highly doubt that. This, I feel like, is a really good time to talk about the properties and potential of bamboo and whether or not it's actually using that potential. So technically, potentially, bamboo can grow without irrigation, but most farmers today still use some kind of irrigation to have a steady supply instead of only being dependent on rain. And we kind of see this over and over, that there is a lot of potential in bamboo, but once you take that material, you take it out of nature, you put it into an industry, into production, you lose a lot of that environmental credibility right away. You also technically don't need to use pesticides on bamboo, but we see that happening anyway. Conveniently, a lot of the businesses that sell you bamboo products only focus on what it can potentially be and not so much of what actually happens in the supply chain. Mostly because they also don't know. They cannot confirm that there has been no irrigation and no pesticides related to the production of their clothing, because they don't know. The supply chains tend to be really opaque and really untransparent. Grain of salt. I just love being the party pooper in this regard. If we look at this recent study from 2025, the Global Service Report compared 10 man-made cellulose fibers and measured them on various environmental parameters, including water usage. And interestingly, the water consumption of Chinese bamboo pulp and Indian cotton pulped in China consumed basically the same amount of water, which was a lot compared to the rest of the sample materials. The material with the least amount of water usage was Belgian flax. My point being here that bamboo has the potential of being a low impact material, really a very low impact material, but that doesn't mean that it inherently always is. Bamboo is a type of grass. It grows incredibly fast and it is rock hard. So how come bamboo fabric is so nice and soft? When we see a label that says 100% bamboo fiber or 100% bamboo fabric, what it actually is typically is viscose or rayon. These materials I often see categorized as semi-synthetics because their origin is technically natural. Because yeah, the bamboo did grow out of the ground, but that is also where the similarities with any natural resource kind of ends. Okay. Viscose and rayon are made from wood pulp, from trees, or from bamboo, same thing. But then those wood or bamboo fibers undergo extreme chemical processing to become spinnable yarn, and that can then be made into fabric. This process can be more or less impactful if the chemical processing is performed in a closed loop system, like it is with Tencel or Lyocell. It uses fewer chemicals and causes less water consumption and water pollution because you keep using the same thing. What happens in the fast fashion industry typically is not that at all. It's not a closed loop system, which means that you flush chemicals and polluted water into our waterways every single day. The documentary River Blue did an amazing job at uncovering how extensive this pollution actually is. This table from the 2025 LCA report I think is pretty interesting. Here they're presenting combined environmental impact scores in these points from the entire life cycle production of 1 ton of viscose fiber, broken down by 3 major categories: human health, ecosystems, and resources. Cotton has the highest impact while bamboo has the smallest. But there isn't actually a world of a difference. Hot take. In the total, there's just a 50-point difference. 506 for cotton and 453 for bamboo. If you hear someone say cotton is so much more environmentally unfriendly than bamboo, bamboo is just so much more sustainable, wouldn't you expect the difference to be bigger than what, 10%? Yeah. Yes, it is better. Is it like a world of a difference? Not really. There is, as with anything, a massive difference when it comes to what kind of material we are analyzing. And there is a really big difference between what kind of bamboo material you're looking at as well. Is it produced in a closed loop system with fewer chemicals and less water, less energy? Or is it produced the fast fashion way? How do we as consumers specifically know this? Like, do you need to look into the individual supply chains to know what's happening? Well, if you want to be 100% sure, yeah. One thing that you can look for in the label, like in the tag of a piece of clothing, is whether or not it's referred to as viscose or rayon. Rayon accounts for about 80% of semi-synthetic fibers. It is the vast amount of semi-synthetics that are out there. They are like this rayon viscose. If you want something better, like the closed loop system, like the less energy consumption, you have to find something made from Lyocell. Also, if you're confused about the difference, similarities of rayon and viscose, you and me both, like what is the difference? What are the similarities? Because it feels like those terms are being thrown around quite willy-nilly. So I am super confused about that. According to Textile Exchange, the difference between viscose and rayon is simply the name, what it's called in the US versus what it's called in the rest of the world. Okay. When globally we produce between 100 and 150 billion pieces of clothing every single year, we can't really be talking about good, just less bad. Many fashion and garment companies advertise bamboo as a sustainable option to cotton or to synthetic fibers, which I would claim is greenwashing because the reality is so much more complex. On the surface, it's pretty easy to get the idea that bamboo is a super green material, but once we scratch the surface, well, we also found out that bamboo fabric doesn't really have bamboo in it. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that consumers are constantly being misled in terms of the environmental credibility of bamboo. It's being marketed as a material that is inherently always super sustainable, and it really isn't. It has the potential to be, but that doesn't mean that you can just pop it into a global supply chain and a billion-dollar industry and just have it be sustainable in that. That's not how it works, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. In fact, the Federal Trade Commission has taken action against companies for misleadingly labeling bamboo products as bamboo when they're really just rayon. I know I must sound like a broken record, because I am. Really, the main thing that we can do is buy, consume, and produce less. It is the volume of clothing that is the main problem. There are no one of these materials that are sustainable across the board, because across the board we are producing beyond our planetary boundaries. And that means that anyone selling you the idea of sustainability without having reduction of products as a major part of their business model is probably full of shit. I hope that this was helpful. The thing is, people always say to me that these videos are super unhelpful because I keep saying the same thing. We have to buy less, we have to maintain the clothes we already have, we have to repair the things that we already have, and we have to buy less new shit, we have to buy less on impulse, we have to follow less trends, and all of that continues to be true. There's not one single product or material that we can use in the way that we're using things now and have it be sustainable. But let's say that you are buying your first pair of underwear in 10 years and you want it to be a more sustainable material. I would recommend looking for a lyocell material that can be bamboo derived, then made in a closed loop system. Or you can go the organic cotton route. If it sounds like a miracle material, it probably is just greenwashing. So I hope that even though there are probably many people that think this is really unhelpful, I hope that there are some that find this somewhat helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Let me know down below what kind of materials or products you would like me to see compare next. And let's continue the impact analysis series because I love to do these videos. I get to nerd out. I'm having the best fucking time of my life. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day, and I will see you guys next time. Take really good care of yourselves. Until then, bye.